Fire Emblem Warriors 3 Hopes takes us to a very familiar Fodlan that quickly goes out of control once Shez is introduced into the story. While these new changes and additions may be obvious to many who played the original game, a few of them are better hidden than others, while others are sure to confuse many, and clarifying all these is the purpose of this video. This video is an analysis on the biggest story changes so far, and I will be leaving my personal opinion on whether they were executed well or not in a separate video. This video does not really focus on new character introductions that much, as that will be another video altogether, because there are many dads introduced so far. So without any more delays, let's start. The expanded flashback. Like the first game, the game starts with a flashback of the final battle between Seiros and Nemesis's army. In this one, however, we are shown new scenes where Macuel and Indek are fighting soldiers in their dragon forms. Keyhole and Cethleanne, with brighter hair, are briefly shown as well, and a group of Agarthans, with their leader having similar powers to Shez perhaps, are seen supporting the fight from afar before Seiros finds their location and blasts their spot, bringing an end to the memory. Judging by the timing of it, it's implied this scene is meant to take place before the flashback from Three Houses where Seiros brings an end to the battle by killing Nemesis, so lore-wise, that's our first addition. Prologue. Unlike Three Houses, where the pre-timeskip took 12 chapters, over half of a route's length, in Three Hopes, the pre-timeskip is now a 3-chapter prologue, so no academy arc this time. How does the story pull this off? Let's get into it. Number 1. The encounter with Kostas. Shez's survival and beef with Byleth leads them to travel around Fodlan, thus making them meet Edelgard, Dimitri, and Claude way before they get to find Remire Village like the original. A big side effect is that, as Shez has been granted control of Arvel's power by now, unlike Byleth, they make swift work of Kostas to the point where he dies, so that means no Flame Emperor scene for later. Number 2. Student Shez and Professor Jeritza. Due to Shez saving the house leaders, Rhea makes them a student of one of the 3 houses of their choice as a reward, which is cool as they get their own unique outfit you can select whenever you want to in their room. And with Byleth nowhere to be seen, Jeritza is chosen as the professor for the house Manuela and Hanneman didn't pick, which is the one Shez always ends up with. Number 3. The second mission. Due to Kostas' death, remnants of his bandits end up retreating to their fortress to the north bordering Roe territory, but when they're intercepted, Agarthan mages warp them away to the bandit hideout bordering the kingdom and the empire. The magic act causes the Knights of Seiros to lose them, but Professor Jeritza is able to trace their blood scent, like a dog, I guess, and rushes alone to the hideout. When the students catch up to them, they see the fortress and storm it, incidentally rescuing Monica, the real one, in the process from getting her identity stolen, and presumably killed as well. Only in Edelgard's side of the story, it's revealed this wasn't a happy coincidence. At this point in the timeline, it's revealed Edelgard knows Monica is still alive, and given how the aftermath of Kostas' death played in her favor, she determined it was worth the risk and disclosed her plan to Jeritza. If I had to guess, her logic being, as long as the church was the one publicly leading the rescue, there was little the Agarthans could do to pin it against her, their alliance notwithstanding. As a result, in Three Hopes, Monica joins the Black Eagles as a playable unit and does become a proper member of the group, while exposing Solon as Tomas, her kidnapper. Number 4. Monica's kidnapper. After Monica's rescue, she reveals to the church that it was Tomas, and not Kostas' bandits, who ended up kidnapping her before her graduation, which leads to Solon dropping his disguise and warping away when the church tries to arrest him, a whopping 6 months earlier than in Three Houses. And so, the critical divergence between Three Houses and Three Hopes are due to these changes. Number 1, Shez meets the 3 nobles instead of Byleth, which ends up killing Kostas and allowing Jeritza to remain the 3rd professor instead of that role going to Byleth. And number 2, because the bandits are scattered and attempt to escape back to their fortress and Kostas is killed, the Flame Emperor does not tell Kostas to continue his mission that sees him die at Xanadu. Because of these 2 variables, Edelgard 180s and treats Shez's arrival, Jeritza's role as a professor, and the likelihood of the bandits to retreat back to the fortress where they, I guess, suspect Monica was held, or knew she was held? I'm not really sure on this. She seizes the opportunity to rescue Monica, as this is their best shot to do so. Now let's move on to the 3 individual routes: Scarlet Blaze, Azure Gleam, and Golden Wildfire. Scarlet Blaze. Number 5. Edelgard Allies with the Church. As a quick recap, Edelgard's plan in the original timeline was to slowly set up the stage for a coup against Duke Aegir via gaining support from the Agarthans, Count Bergles, and Count Hevring behind his back, so she could become the Emperor and launch a quick offensive against the Church, and later the rest of Fodlan, all while using the Agarthans as resource up until they were no longer needed and could be disposed of. But in the Academy phase, she makes it clear that her power alone is insufficient and hopes that Byleth and their ability to wield the Sword of the Creator can become an asset to her. In Three Hopes, Monica's rescue and Solan's early outing gives Edelgard enough confidence that she decides to drop her original plan and risk everything for the sake of killing two birds with one stone, by telling Rhea her uncle is one of the Slitherers in league with Monica's kidnapper and how she needs her Knights of Seiros to help remove them from the Empire. Edelgard ends up using the Church and the Knights of Seiros as a support to hasten her coup many months in advance, which both Count Bergles and Hevring lampshade once they get the news, and this way gets rid of both Duke Aegir and Arundel/Tallis, granting her complete control of the Empire. And speaking of which, Number 6. Edelgard attacks Arundel/those who slither in the dark. Edelgard's choice to attack Arundel this early not only means she loses most of her resources she gains from them in Three Houses, aka no Emir, it also spares her from all the guilt by association situations she ends up having in the main game through their alliance, like Flayn's kidnapping and Geralt's death. Additionally, Edelgard restores the Southern Church as a wedge between the Empire and Garreg Mach, and then declares war on them at the very start of the 2-year timeskip in 1181. Azure Gleam. Number 7. Rufus and the Tragedy of Duscur. In Three Houses, Rufus was an unseen character and a plot device. We're told he's Dimitri's uncle and the kingdom's regent, a womanizer, a pretty bad ruler, that he's suspected to have been involved in the tragedy of Duscur, a motive Cornelia uses to frame Dimitri for his death in Azure Moon, that he lives in Crimson Flower for the sake of keeping Dimitri's bloodline going, and that in Verdant Wind, Claude says that both he and Dimitri were reportedly killed in a bloody coup. In Three Hopes, Rufus is an actual character who gets an expansion pack which reframes him entirely, which in my opinion seems to be an exploration of his fate in Verdant Wind. He is expanded in the following ways. He was involved in the tragedy, and legit tried to kill Dimitri in it and in another Kingdom rebellion mentioned in the main game. His nephew keeps up with his shady shenanigans for the sake of avoiding conflict. Rufus feels constant confliction about all he has done. And finally, Cornelia has been playing him like a fiddle. This is key in the story as Tallis alerts Cornelia, whose true identity is Cleobulus, who ended up being unused in Three Houses incidentally, of what's happening in the Empire just in case. And this makes her manipulate Rufus into kickstarting his own coup in Fargus under the pretext of House Fraldarius wanting to use Dimitri as a puppet king. This in turn not only also makes Dimitri ally with the Knights of Seiros, just like Edelgard did prior, to stand a chance against his uncle's forces, but it also streamlines the whole arc Dimitri had with the tragedy of Duscur in the original game once Rufus is dealt with and Dimitri has no choice but to ascend Fargus's throne, meaning the events happen in a way where no real bad blood between him and Edelgard exists this time around. And finally, instead of Dimitri's allies wrestling with his worst self until Rodrigue is killed, which with Byleth's help pulls him out from the darkness to then defeating Edelgard, Dimitri, Duke, Felix Fraldarius, and Margrave Gautier, among others, wrestle with the reality that if they support the Church, they will make enemies with the Empire and thus go to war against them, kind of like what happens to the kingdom in Crimson Flower. Golden Wildfire. Number 8. The Super Almyran Invasion. And while all that kerfuffle is happening in the Empire and Kingdom, Shahid, an Almyran prince introduced in Three Hopes who wants to claim the Almyran throne, takes the chance to start a bona fide Almyran invasion in the Leicester Alliance, thus forcing Claude's house, the remaining Knights of Seiros, and Holst Goneril to fight them head on. This is a huge deal because in Three Houses, most Almyran attacks happened in paralogs, and per Cyril's own words, they were never truly serious into conquering stuff. Unlike Three Hopes though, that timeline is never in a position where both the Empire and the Kingdom are essentially busy on their own messes at the same time. So in this one unlikely chance, Shahid seizes an opportunity to invade with seemingly little repercussions whatsoever that he just runs with it and goes all out. Luckily, Claude and the gang manage to force him to retreat, though the fact that his looming threat remains means Claude has to stay in the Alliance and prepare for what's to come. And number 9, the Officers Academy closes down. All of these events drastically shake out Fodlan to its core to the point Rhea decides to temporarily close down the Officers Academy in Garreg Mach, given the nobles and commoners from all 3 nations have understandably more important things to do than study due to all that's happened, and also for their safety. This way, the stage for a new time skip where the main meat of the game will happen has been set. And finally, since this is worth pointing out, number 10, Unseen No More. A lot of characters who are relatives to many students in Three Houses got mentioned here and there in that game actually appear in person in Three Hopes. So far, the demo has shown Count Bergles, Caspar's dad, Count Hevering, Linhardt's dad, Count Farley, Bernadetta's dad, Grand Duke Rufus, Dimitri's uncle, Margrave Gautier, Sylvain's dad, Lord Holst, Hilda's brother, and finally, Count Gloucester, Lawrence's dad. Like I mentioned before, I'm going to do a video on how so far these new characters are acting and what their responsibilities and roles are. But with that being said, that will do it for this video. So there are a lot of crazy substantial changes that go on in Three Hopes, and for the most part, I do enjoy most of them. There are some routes that I think are done better than others, but I will keep my more detailed opinions on that in a future video. Like I said, the next video on this topic will be about these new characters and what their roles are. And finally, I just want to give a colossal thank you to everyone who was in that live stream, who supported the channel and subscribed. The channel has finally hit past 95,000 subscribers thanks to this demo being out and all of you guys tuning in and watching and supporting the channel. So mega big appreciation. The channel is now less than 5,000 subscribers away to 100,000, which is always been the goal. And it's going to be a really exciting summer to say the least. And I'm very hopeful that the channel finally gets there. So thank you all so much. And with that all being said, I'll see you in the next one. Deuces.